So, hello, hello, hello. Hey, yeah, so this is Kofi, and I have with me this afternoon Doug and David. And Doug is in Maine, and David is in New Hampshire, and I am in Michigan. So we are doing a tasting here. We'll talk about Bordeaux and compare that with some California wine. But we'll jump into it. And how about we start with you, Doug? Well, what do you have for us this afternoon?
Yeah, okay. Well, so we're in Bordeaux, and therefore I have a wine here from Bordeaux, Chateau Louis Ladouis from Saint Estèphe. Now, why do I have this wine? It's not a famous wine at all. In Bordeaux, you can see here on the map where Bordeaux is geologically, this space right up in here, and Saint Estèphe is right where my finger is pointing now, on the left bank of the Garonne. So I like Saint Estèphe a lot. And why is that? Well, Saint Estèphe is just north of Pauillac, which means it's just north of Chateau Lafite Rothschild and Chateau Mouton Rothschild and all those very famous wines. And in fact, I don't know, on here, you can see this dark purple. This is Lafite Rothschild. And there's a little canal right here. It's about as wide as your desk. And right across from that is Saint Estèphe. So when you drive into Saint Estèphe, you go by some famous places, Causse des Tournelles, Causse la Barrie, La Fond Rocher, and then up here is Louis Ladouis. Now notice, it's right adjacent to all these very famous and much more expensive wines. Like, for example, La Fond Rocher, which I've been buying for decades. It's beautiful, but it used to be $16 and now it's $75. So the price has been going up because why? Because it's really, really good wine. Causse des Tournelles right here starts usually about $150 or $200 a bottle, and that's when you can't drink it for another 5 or 10 years. So what I like about Louis Ladouis is that it's not so different than those famous ones. It's coming up in the world, and take a look at this. Every year or two, there's a reevaluation of chateaus in Bordeaux. And the Cru Bourgeois, there's about 250 or 60 of those are the ones that are making really nice wine. But they're not in the fancy 1865 classification.
Wow.
So notice here, then the highest level of the Cru Bourgeois, the 14 that are in this category, here's our friend, Chateau Louis Ladouis. So what does this mean? It means that people in Bordeaux recognize that it is at the apex of these wines that are being recognized as being very well made, very excellent, especially for the price. Now, Louis Ladouis, this is 2014, which is a pretty good year. Not one of the great years. It's adjacent to one of the regular great years. So that means that this is the wine that you drink while you're waiting for the really great ones to come ready in the cellar. Fine. This wine costs $16.
Man.
So this wine is mostly Merlot, which is unusual for the left bank of Bordeaux, because usually the cabs are the major component. But up in Saint Estèphe, there's more clay in the soil than in the rest of the left bank. And the clays are really good for Merlots. And so one of the things I like about Saint Estèphe is that you get more Merlot in the blend, and consequently it goes with certain foods that I like a lot, like lamb chops or roast chicken, or just a lot of things that I like with Merlot. So here we have Louis Ladouis, $16, a little bit off the beaten path, but not far, at the apex of wines that are recognized for being well made every other year, Cru Bourgeois.
Oh, very nice. And Doug, this is one of the things I liked about, when I talk with you about wine is your knowledge about I call it the wineries between the wineries, right? So the wineries that not a lot of people know about, they don't have a huge name recognition, but that are just making outstanding wines,
Yeah.
right?
Well, for me, coffee, it's the wines are really personal in the sense that for me, the fun part is the exploration to try to find something which is not well known. So it's sort of kind of a surprise, but also that's a good deal because, you know, I'm not a wealthy guy like you guys. And so I need to find wines that are, you know, well priced, but that are really, really good. And so that's what I'm always on the search for. And in this case, Ledouis is fits that category.
Uh-huh.
I think we need to be careful because you can't extrapolate quality from point A to point B. Or if you have two great wines and you're in between, it's necessarily going to be as great as the two on either side. However, what Doug is doing is he uses it as a guide on which wines to go try and see. Ultimately, it's a combination of trying it and how it feels and how it tastes and the price point. And if you can find through this, otherwise you just go there and all these different wines. How do I know which to pick?
Yeah,
There's hundreds, thousands of them. But with this technique, there's a rationale, there's a motivation, there's a guidance. It's not foolproof. You got to buy it, you got to taste it. You might throw it out, say, well, that's what. And then you could ask,
I've done that.
how could it be so bad when it's next to something else? Well, there's probably going to be a reason for that. So you got to stick to the ground, follow the ground, but don't just do it linearly.
Right.
Right. No, David, that's a very good point. Thank you. Thank you. You know, in a minute, I want us to talk about the geology of the area. But before we do that, Doug, I want to ask you, so what I have here, my bottle is a Chateau d'Escurac. It's a 2007, you know, from the Médoc. So how would you compare that region to the one, you know, you're talking about?
Well, I've had Escurac. I had a case of the 1989 from Escurac, and it was incredibly inexpensive, which, you know, was one of my objectives. When I tried a bottle of it initially, it's a cab blend with Merlot, and at the time it had some I think Petit Verdot or Malbec or something in it. I'm not sure, but you know, it's full bodied. You know, it's not a heavy wine. It's not like a big gigantic fruit bomb wine, but it's a full bodied wine. It has a lot of fragrance for me. When it opens up and you swirl it and swirl it and swirl it. And, you know, I used to have this every Sunday with my roast chicken until I ran out of it. But I kept the box, and I used the box down in the cellar to, you know, step up on my kids' things from the top shelf. So I always liked Escurac, and I think I still have a couple bottles down there.
Okay. Great. So David, let's explore the geology of the area a little bit and what that might do, you know, to the wine that's made there.
So we'll focus on the left bank. Doug, if you could just put your finger along the left bank, all that whole area, and you can see it doesn't have any vibrant colors. It's kind of a gray drab color, whereas off to the right, which would be off to the east, are all those fancy colors in red from the Massif Central, and then the blues. We love those blues. Those are all the limestones of Jurassic and Cretaceous age. And then the darker yellows are more limestones of tertiary. So what about the left bank? It's just this drab area. Well, in fact, in the 1800s, it was a swamp. And the merchants of Bordeaux were getting wines from up the river and then shipping them off. And they said, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to just be merchants. So they brought down a bunch of engineers from Holland, and they drained the swamp. And so that little creek that Doug was talking about between Saint-Estèphe and Pauillac is a canal. It was dug to drain the water out. And the deposits that are there that was in the swamp is all debris that came from massive floods from the Pyrenees. So you go there and you dig in, you get all these rounded, very hard, durable, metamorphic and igneous rocks that came from the Pyrenees. And the Pyrenees was not a mountain range till about 60 million years ago, and it uplifted beginning about 30 million years ago. The debris shot to the north, massive storms, and deposited these broad alluvial fans or river terraces, really I'd call them river terraces of gravel. Well, so so in order to grow the grapes, so you had to get water out because they're only 10 or 15 feet above sea level on these vineyards, and the water table can be just a couple of feet below. And as you know, roots don't like to get their feet wet. So what they did was they drained this gravel, lowered the water table down to 7 or 8 feet, and then the vines were able to grow. It drained really well, and miraculously, it produces these fabulous wines. A priori, probably in today's concepts, that the best wines come from residual soils on hillsides, you would never go to Bordeaux. But the proof is in the pudding, man. They have figured it out. They are the world-class wines of Cabernet, and so there you are. So you don't outsmart yourself by rejecting areas. If you know what you're doing and you work at it and you find the best varietals and the various things you got to tweak. In this case, they had to tweak the water table, get it lower the water table, and voila, they got it. It's not particularly sexy geology. It's just a bunch of river gravels.
No, those gravels are sitting on top of a limestone base, though, aren't they? You know, this the blue.
Yeah, way down. I mean all that rock that you see to your east is in the subsurface. So if you were to stick a borehole and start drilling down, you'd go through tertiary, you'd go into the Jurassic limestone, and eventually you'd get into a metamorphic basement rock. But the roots don't get there. The roots are water table up, just 100% gravel.
Yeah. There's lenses of clays and things, and there also aren't there that were washed down.
Sure. I mean, anytime you have a river depositing material, you'll have patches of gravel and patches of clay, and because of the in between areas. So it's not a uniform straight blanket of gravel. It's a complicated drainage. It's probably a braided stream, so it's quite complicated.
Yeah. So I think in Bordeaux on the left bank, where they plant the Merlot, is where they have these larger clay lenses. So then those grapes are growing in the clay, and the Cabernet is growing more in the gravel, right?
Right, but the two different things. The right bank is a very different geology. The right bank is getting material from the Massif Central, moving off to the west, and it's older rocks. It's separated. There's a big fault that goes down the Garonne River, so that the bank on the east side actually has risen up. So that's why so the younger stuff has been eroded away, and you're seeing the older rock below it. So if this was uplifted, the rock that's on the east bank would be about here in the column. But we're dealing with the gravel up on top.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, David, and it's really interesting. What you just described is the way Chateau d'Escurac described their vineyard. They say it's set up on 17 meters of gravel, surrounded by marshes.
Yeah. Where is their vineyard?
So it's in the Médoc.
In the Médoc. So it's just north of Bordeaux.
Yeah, Doug, could you?
This whole area from right here down to Bordeaux itself is the Médoc.
Yeah, right.
So it could be anywhere in that area. I forget exactly where Escurac is. I think it might be farther up this way, but I forget.
Yeah, that's neat. So David, you want to talk about your bottle? What do you have there?
Okay, so I have a bottle of Paradigm. Paradigm is a really very nice vineyard in the Oakville AVA. It's owned by Ren Harris, and it's on a particular alluvial fan called the Dwyer fan. Now, people who are familiar with Napa and all the chatter that's going on, they may have heard of what they call the benches on the west side of the valley. Those benches really aren't benches. They're a series of alluvial fans. Debris coming out of the Mayacamas Mountains, creating these fan-shaped materials with gravels near the mountain front, and as they go towards the Napa River, it gets finer and finer grained. And this particular is the Dwyer fan. There are lots of fans that come out. So if you start, the most famous ones are the Rutherford fan, Tokelon fan, Dwyer fan, Halter Valley fan, Hopper Creek fan, each one of these things. They all have their own particular composition because they are draining different portions of the Mayacamas Mountains that have different geologic character. This particular one I like because Ren Harris and his family have been in Napa Valley for, I think, 5 generations. He has been making this wine on the Dwyer fan, which is about a mile south of Tocolone. All of the vineyards around him and to the north, the wine's very expensive. It's all $150 to $1,000 a bottle. Ren keeps his under $100. It's I think it's still by Doug's standards expensive. I think it's $85 for a bottle of this cab. This is a 2011. Let me pour a little bit for me. But it is absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
And I suspect if you did a blind tasting with this wine and one of Beckstoffer's, which is up on the Beckstoffer Tocolone, where the price is 4 times, I would guess 50 out of 100 people would think this is just as good as the other. So it's a nice, deep ruby red. It has all the attributes of a Bordeaux. It's I don't know, they don't put on the label what its percentage, but typically it's mostly Cabernet with a little bit of Merlot, maybe some Cab Franc, and a little bit of Petit Verdot. Yeah.
So have you tasted it yet?
Oh, I've just been smelling it. It's a wine that is balanced. It's got fruit in it, but it's not a fruit bomb. It doesn't desensitize your nostrils with just sweetness. It seems to flow all around the mouth. It has little synapses of poignancy as it goes around, and I don't have the words to describe the actual flavors. I know some of our students and colleagues love to talk about it's cherry or black fruit or horse leather or something or other. I don't like to do that. I just like the feel of it and the taste. And the thing about it is, it as soon as it hits your mouth, you start realizing you have something special in your mouth, and then as you let it roll back, it continues to evolve. And then when you finally swallow it, you say, gee, that's too bad, but wait, it's still there. It's not gone away. It's just a wonderful wine.
Yeah.
And what's the vintage again?
So the vintage is 2011, and 2011 was kind of a rough year in Napa. It was really cold. Doug and I did a tasting once with Philippe Melka, and we had 2011 versus a Bordeaux wine, and he tasted them and he said, "Oh, the 2011 from Napa." He said, "This has to be from Bordeaux." Mm-hmm. And Philippe Melka is from Bordeaux, but he's been making wines in Napa. And then when we told him it was 2000, he said, "Oh, that's why it tasted like that, because it was such a cold year. It was weathered just like Bordeaux." So he kind of lost, but then won.
So David, I want to ask you a question. So this is one of my current interests, and that is biochar, and the use of biochar that some wineries have been running as an experiment to help the vines express, terroir a little more. If you were to think about it, and thinking about the recent fires that are happening in California, would you say that there is a possibility that those fires will affect the structure of the soil and hence how the vines express themselves through the soil in the future?
Well, first of all, the fires raged around the vineyards, but rarely did they did they impact the vineyards themselves? Because, you know, the vineyards today, you know, how they crop everything so tightly, and they either till the soil below the vines, or some, God forbid, but many people still use Roundup to kill all the grass. So there's really not much to burn in a vineyard. So the vineyards themselves didn't get destroyed. Now there might be some fly ash that fell on it, because that clearly was the case, but that's just organic carbon, probably added a little fertilizer and tilt to the soil. So no, I don't think the fires had a significant impact on the vineyards. Now, if any of my winemaker friends see this and tell me I'm crazy, but from what in my conversations with them, the worst that happened was the heat was so bad that a lot of their piping, the plastic piping or the irrigation hoses melted, and so they have to replace that. But the vineyards themselves were fine.
Good. While we are on the fire, you know, I also have a bottle here of Gustafson. It's a Cab Franc. And Gustafson is one of the wineries that we visited when we took that tour to Sonoma. And I just got an email from them the other day that they are shutting down.
Why?
Because of the fire. They say they are shutting down as a winery. They are no longer in business, and they have a sale. They are trying to sell.
They lost their inventory. They lost the winery. Wow. The only thing they didn't lose was their house, I guess.
Well, remember, it was on a hillside surrounded by all those oak forests and chaparral and madrone. So a fire, and their vineyards weren't very big.
No.
And they had that beautiful building that they made. If all of that burnt, I could see where the cost, recouping that cost, and who knows about the insurance? I mean, some of these have crop insurance, but not necessarily insurance because insurance is so expensive. They have to have insurance for earthquakes, have to insurance for fire. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's too bad, because that was a really lovely spot.
Yeah. You know, I went through and I was looking at some of the pictures we took there, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous. But the email they sent was just really heartbreaking. You know, you could tell that it was not an easy decision for them. But, you know, it's something they thought about for a long time. And, you know, the entire staff was leaving, and, you know.
Yeah. Well, the owner lived in Chicago, didn't he? Didn't he live in Chicago?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he did. And he would fly out, and, you know, he had a staff that ran it all. He would come out. Well, well, I think about, you know, my friend Bill Harlan. He came really close to losing vineyard around the Bond Winery. That was in peril, but he saved it all. But he has another place called Meadowood, which is a big conference center and resort up this little canyon, and 3/4 of it burned down.
Yeah.
Wow.
Millions of dollars worth of destruction. Now, there were no vineyards up there, but that's where they hold the wine auction every year, like they do in Bond. And so he said that they're planning to rebuild, but it's going to be 3 or 4 years before they get it back to the way it was before.
Okay, folks, thank you for joining us for part 1 of our discussion on the geology and wines of Bordeaux. Part 2 will be coming up soon. We hope you'll join us again. Thank you very much.